My name is Nicole Evans. I am 28 years old, and 15 years after my parents abandoned me at 13, they showed up at my front door, asking me to save them from losing everything. My mother looked older. My father looked desperate. Neither of them looked sorry. Dad held a thin brown folder against his chest. "Nicole," he said, "we need 5 minutes." I almost laughed. They had taken 15 years. Now they wanted 5 minutes. I kept one hand on the door. "Why are you here?" My mother looked past me at my house, then at the car in my driveway. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe even disbelief. The daughter they had left behind had apparently not remained broken enough for the version of me they remembered. Dad opened the folder. "There's an old financial matter we need to clear up." He pulled out several pages and pointed to a line near the bottom. "All we need is your signature." I did not take the pen. "What financial matter?" His jaw tightened. "Something from when you were a child." That was when I saw the name printed near the top. Eleanor Evans, my grandmother, the woman who had died 2 years before my parents disappeared. My stomach tightened. 3 weeks earlier, while sorting through my late Aunt Rebecca's papers, I had found a bank statement with my childhood name on it. Nicole Marie Evans. The account had once held $78,000, money my grandmother had left for me. And shortly before my parents abandoned me, almost all of it had disappeared. My father did not know I had found that statement. He did not know Rebecca had kept records. And he definitely did not know I had already spoken to an attorney. Before I tell you what happened next, if you're enjoying this story so far, please take a second to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It truly helps this channel reach more people who love emotional family stories like these. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in her place? I'm curious to read your thoughts. I finally took the papers. Dad relaxed. Only slightly. Then I read the paragraph above the signature line. It said I acknowledged that all the money from my childhood account had been properly spent for my care. I looked at my mother. She lowered her eyes. Then I looked at Dad. "You want me to sign this?" "Yes, but it isn't true." His face changed. "Nicole, you were 13. You don't remember everything." I did not answer. Instead, I folded the papers and held them against my chest. For 15 years, I had believed my parents left me because they were struggling and could not take care of both children. Now I was beginning to understand something far worse. They had not simply abandoned me. They had taken something first. And when my father reached for the papers, I stepped back. Because there was one question I had waited 15 years to ask. Why did you take Tyler with you and leave me behind? My mother's face went white, and my father whispered the words that told me the answer was worse than I imagined. "Linda, don't say anything." My mother did not say anything, not then. She stared at my father as if she had forgotten I was standing between them. Dad reached toward the papers. "Nicole, this isn't the place for this conversation. It's my house." He pulled his hand back. For several seconds, none of us moved. Then my mother whispered my name. I closed the door, not hard, just enough. I stood with my back against it and listened to their footsteps cross the porch. At 13, I would have opened that door again. At 28, I knew better. But I had not always known better. For most of my childhood, I believed being a good daughter meant being easy. Easy to manage, easy to disappoint, easy to ask for help. My younger brother Tyler never had to learn that. He was 4 years younger than me and had the kind of energy that filled every room. He played baseball, forgot homework, lost jackets, broke 2 windows before he was 10, and somehow made my parents laugh while apologizing. I loved him. I also learned early that our family bent around him. When Tyler had baseball practice on the same evening as my school writing award, my parents went to baseball. When I needed new shoes the same month Tyler needed a new glove, the glove came first. Whenever I complained, Dad had the same answer. "You're older, Nicole." Mom used another. "Your brother needs us more right now." Right now lasted years. Still, I never thought they would leave me. The summer I turned 13, money became a constant shadow in our house. Dad had invested in a small property business with a friend. I did not understand the details. I understood the arguments. I understood envelopes disappearing from the kitchen counter when I entered. I understood Mom standing in the grocery store returning things from the cart after checking her bank balance. Then one Wednesday morning, she made pancakes. That frightened me more in memory than it did at the time. Mom rarely cooked breakfast during the week. She sat across from me and said I would spend a few days with Aunt Rebecca. Rebecca was Mom's older sister. She lived about 2 hours away and worked in an office managing rental properties. I loved staying with her. Her apartment was small, quiet, and always smelled faintly of cinnamon. Why am I going? Mom kept cutting her pancake. Your father and I need to deal with some business problems. Is Tyler coming? No. Why not? He's staying with us. I remember that answer. Even then, something about it hurt. But I packed for 4 days, 2 pairs of jeans, 3 shirts, pajamas, a paperback novel. My mother drove me to Rebecca's apartment that afternoon. Dad did not come, neither did Tyler. Before leaving, Mom hugged me longer than usual. Be good for Aunt Rebecca. I rolled my eyes. Mom, I'm 13. She smiled. But her eyes did not. Then she left. Sunday came. My parents did not call. Monday came. Nothing. Rebecca called our house. No answer. She called Mom's workplace. Mom had resigned. Then she called Dad's company. He had resigned too. I remember Rebecca standing beside her kitchen counter with the phone pressed against her ear. Her face changed. Nicole, get your shoes. We drove home. The driveway was empty. The curtains were gone from the downstairs windows. Rebecca unlocked the door with the spare key. Inside, the house echoed. I ran upstairs. My bedroom was still there, my clothes, my books, my desk, everything. Then I crossed the hallway. Tyler's room was almost empty. His clothes were gone. His baseball equipment was gone. Even the framed photograph of him with Dad at a Cleveland Guardians game was missing. I stood in his doorway. That was the moment I understood. They had taken him. They had left me. Rebecca found a note downstairs. My parents said they needed a fresh start and that I would be safer staying with her temporarily. Temporarily. I built an entire year around that word. Every car outside Rebecca's building made me look toward the window. Every phone call made my stomach jump. I kept my bag half packed under the bed. Then, 8 months later, Mom finally called. I grabbed the phone so quickly I nearly dropped it. Mom? Hi, sweetheart. I started crying immediately. Where are you? We're in Arizona. When are you coming back? Silence. I heard a television behind her. Then Tyler's voice. He was laughing. My parents had a home somewhere. My brother was there. They had simply built it without me. Why didn't you take me? Mom started crying too. Things happened very quickly. I can come now. Nicole, I can help. I won't complain. I can take care of Tyler after school. Rebecca turned away from me. I lowered my voice. I can be good. That sentence stayed with me longer than almost anything else. I had been abandoned, and my first instinct was to offer better behavior. Then Dad took the phone. Nicole, stop upsetting your mother. I froze. When are you coming for me? Your aunt can give you stability right now. For how long? We'll talk about it later. Later never came. They did not call the following week. Eventually, the calls stopped completely. Rebecca became my legal guardian. She never tried to replace my mother. She did something more important. She stayed. She moved her desk into her bedroom so I could have the second room. She attended parent conferences. She taught me to drive. She helped me fill out college applications. And she never once told me my parents were terrible people. When I asked why they had chosen Tyler, she always gave me the same answer. Nicole, that was an adult decision. Don't turn it into a judgment about yourself. I wanted to believe her. For years, I couldn't. At 17, I found Tyler online. He was standing between Mom and Dad in front of a Christmas tree. All 3 were smiling. I stared at that photograph until Rebecca gently closed my laptop. Don't do this to yourself. Why wasn't I enough? She sat beside me. That isn't the question. It felt like the only question. I worked through community college and later finished my accounting degree. Numbers appealed to me because they did not change their stories. A payment happened or it did not. An account balanced or it did not. By 28, I worked in financial operations for a commercial property company. I had bought my own house, nothing extravagant, but mine. Then Rebecca died. She had been sick for only a few months. Losing her felt like losing the only person who had ever chosen me without hesitation. After the funeral, I spent weeks sorting through her belongings. Rebecca saved everything: receipts, tax records, old warranties, school documents. One Saturday afternoon, I opened a box labeled Nicole. Inside were my guardianship papers, report cards, medical records. Then I found an envelope. My name was written across it. Inside was a bank statement from when I was 13. The account holder was Nicole Marie Evans. I almost put it aside. Then I saw the balance, $78,000. I stared at the number. There had to be some mistake. Behind the statement was a letter from the attorney who had handled my paternal grandmother's estate. My grandmother Eleanor had left money for me. The account was supposed to remain protected while I was a minor. My father had controlled it as custodian. Then I found the final statement. Almost empty. The largest withdrawal had happened 6 weeks before my parents left Ohio. I sat on Rebecca's floor surrounded by papers. For the first time, the timing of my childhood looked different. Dad's failing business, the secret calls, the sudden move, me being left with Rebecca. I found a handwritten note clipped to the statements. Rebecca had written only a few lines. She said she discovered the account while arranging my guardianship. She believed my father had used the money improperly. She had challenged his explanation through an attorney, but had never obtained a complete accounting. At the bottom was a name, Daniel Mercer. I called him the next morning. When I introduced myself, he became quiet. Nicole Evans? Yes. Rebecca's niece? My heart started pounding. You knew her? Very well. I told him what I had found. He asked me to bring everything. 2 days later, I sat across from him in his office. Daniel was in his late 60s and remembered Rebecca immediately. He explained that my grandmother's money could legally be managed by my father while I was a child, but it was supposed to be used for my benefit. My father had claimed that the withdrawals paid for my living expenses. I almost laughed. Living expenses where? Exactly, Daniel said. Rebecca had asked the same question. She had been supporting me. She had records, rent, food, school costs, insurance, clothes, everything. Why didn't she tell me? Daniel looked at me for a moment. Because you were a child when she discovered it. Later, I think she wanted you to decide for yourself whether to reopen it. That sounded like Rebecca. Then Daniel showed me a copy of my father's old response. He had claimed the money went toward my housing and family support before and during the transition to Rebecca's care. The dates did not match. Some withdrawals happened after I was already living with her. I felt sick. Did my mother know? Daniel could not answer. Did this have anything to do with why they left me? He could not answer that either. Not yet. 3 days later, I received a message online from Tyler. I had not spoken to my brother in 15 years. His first message contained only 2 sentences. Nicole, Mom and Dad are looking for you. Please don't sign anything they give you. I read it 5 times. Then I typed back, why? His reply came almost immediately. Because Dad is in financial trouble, and there's something else you need to know. I waited. Then another message appeared. When we moved to Arizona, they told me you refused to come with us. I stopped breathing for a moment. What? Tyler called me. His voice sounded nothing like the 9-year-old boy I remembered. But when he became nervous, he still spoke too quickly. He told me our parents had said I wanted to stay with Rebecca. They said I hated the idea of moving. They said I chose Ohio. I gripped the phone. I was 13, Tyler. I know. No. You don't understand. Mom packed my bag herself. He became quiet. Then why would they tell me that? I knew the answer before I said it. Because otherwise you might have asked why they left your sister behind. Tyler started crying. I did not. Not yet. Then he told me why my parents were suddenly looking for me. Dad was facing serious financial problems connected to an old business matter. Someone had started asking questions about money he used when they moved west. He needed me to sign a statement confirming that the money from my grandmother had been spent for me, the same papers he brought to my door. Suddenly, everything connected. Almost everything. There was still one question. Why had they taken Tyler? If they were simply running from debt, taking one child and abandoning the other made no sense, unless leaving me served another purpose. The following evening, Tyler called again. His voice was different. Nicole, I asked Mom why they didn't take you. What did she say? At first, nothing. Then she told me Dad said Aunt Rebecca was the safest place for you. I closed my eyes. That was the story I already knew. But Tyler was not finished. I asked why I couldn't stay with Aunt Rebecca too. My hand tightened around the phone, and Mom started crying. Tyler took a breath. Then she said something I've never heard before. I waited. She said Dad couldn't risk taking you with us. Why? Tyler went silent for several seconds. Because the money was in your name. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I asked Tyler to repeat it. He did. Dad couldn't risk taking you because the money was in your name. The sentence sounded absurd at first. Then it began fitting into places I had spent 15 years trying to fill. What does that mean? I don't know. Mom wouldn't explain. Dad came into the room and she stopped talking. Did he know you were calling me? No. Keep it that way for now. After we hung up, I called Daniel. The next morning, I sat in his office with every document Rebecca had saved spread across the conference table. I told him what Tyler had heard. Daniel leaned back. There may be a simple explanation. Simple did not sound comforting anymore. He pulled out the old guardianship records. Your aunt began asking questions about the account almost immediately after you came to live with her. If your parents had taken you across state lines, while your father was trying to conceal what happened to your money, keeping control of the situation might have become more difficult. So leaving me with Rebecca helped him? Possibly. But we need evidence, Nicole, not theories. He was right. I had spent too much of my childhood inventing explanations for my parents. I was not going to spend adulthood inventing accusations. We needed facts, and Rebecca had left them. Daniel and I went through her records carefully. This time, I noticed something I had missed. A copy of a letter Rebecca sent my father 11 months after he left. She had asked him to provide a complete accounting of my grandmother's money. His written response claimed that most of it had already been spent supporting me before the move. Rebecca had attached receipts and school records contradicting him. Then came another letter. My father changed his explanation. Now he said the money had been invested temporarily because the family was facing financial hardship. 2 explanations. Same money. That afternoon, Daniel contacted an attorney named Maya Patel, who handled financial disputes involving family assets. Maya was direct. She did not promise me anything. She read the documents, asked questions, and built a timeline. Then she pointed to the papers my father had brought to my house. This is what matters now. The statement said I accepted his explanation and gave up any future claim connected to the account. Why now? Because he needs your agreement now. Why? We need to find out. That answer came sooner than expected. Tyler called 2 days later. Dad had asked him for money, not a small amount, $40,000. Tyler did not have it. Dad told him an old business dispute could force him to sell the house and drain most of their retirement savings. Then Dad said something that made Tyler suspicious. None of this would be happening if Nicole would just cooperate. I almost smiled when Tyler repeated it. 15 years without speaking to me, yet somehow I was responsible again. Did he say what I'm supposed to cooperate with? The papers? Anything else? Tyler hesitated. He said the money was never really yours because you were a child. There it was. The sentence that explained my father better than any legal document. He had never thought of himself as taking from me. I had been 13. His daughter, dependent on him. So what belonged to me had felt available to him. I asked Tyler another question. Grandma left money to you too, didn't she? Yeah. Did Dad use yours? No. Why not? Grandpa controlled mine until I turned 18. I closed my eyes. Now I understood my mother's words. Dad couldn't risk taking you because the money was in your name. My account was the one he had controlled. My money was the one that had disappeared. And I was the child old enough to ask questions. Tyler had been 9. I had been 13. I remembered the envelopes, the arguments, the day Dad swept financial papers off the kitchen table when I walked in. I had already been noticing things. Maybe my father had noticed me noticing. Maya cautioned me again. That was still an inference. So we kept looking. Then Tyler found the piece we needed. He had gone to my parents' house to help Mom move boxes from the garage because they were preparing to sell. Inside an old file cabinet was a folder from Dad's failed property business. Tyler did not take it. He photographed 2 pages with his phone. The first showed money transferred into the business 6 weeks before my parents moved. The amount matched the withdrawal from my account. The second was a handwritten planning sheet. Arizona move, deposit, truck rental, Tyler's school. Then one line underneath. Nicole with Rebecca until account issue resolved. I read those 6 words 3 times. Until account issue resolved. Not because I was difficult. Not because there was no room. Not because I chose Rebecca. My father had written the reason down himself. I sent the photographs to Maya. She told Tyler not to search for anything else and to keep the originals where they were. We had enough to confront them. But before that happened, my mother called me. This time, I answered. Nicole, can we talk? Yes. Your father says you've hired an attorney. I have. Why would you do that to us? I almost fell into the old pattern. Explain, reassure, make mom comfortable. Instead, I asked a question. Did Dad use Grandma's money for his business? Silence. Mom? We were going to replace it. My heart began pounding. So you knew. We were desperate. That's not what I asked. Yes. One word. Clean. Final. I looked down at Rebecca's papers. Why did you leave me with her? Mom began crying. I waited. Eventually she spoke. Your father said it was temporary. Why me? Because Rebecca could take care of you. She could have taken Tyler too. Another silence. Why me, Mom? She breathed in sharply. Because of the account. Hearing it from Tyler had hurt. Hearing it from her changed something permanently. Explain. Your father thought if you came with us and anyone started asking about the money, it would become more complicated. Rebecca already knew about your grandmother's estate. He thought leaving you with her for a few months would give him time to fix everything. A few months became 15 years. I know. No, Mom. You knew where I was. She started crying harder. I remembered being 13 and crying into the telephone while trying to convince her I could be good. This time, I let the silence belong to her. Then I asked the question I feared most. Did you ever plan to come back for me? Yes. Immediately. Almost too quickly. Then why didn't you? Because the business didn't recover the way your father expected. Rebecca started asking questions. Then she got guardianship. Everything became harder. Calling me wasn't hard. No. Visiting me wasn't hard. No. Telling Tyler the truth wasn't hard. She had no answer. I pressed my fingers against my forehead. Why did you tell him I refused to come? Your father thought it would help him adjust. And you agreed? I didn't know what else to tell him. The truth. My voice cracked for the first time. You could have told him the truth. Mom whispered my name. I ended the call. Then I cried. Not like I had at 13. There was no bargaining this time. No promise to be easier. I cried because the mystery was finally gone. Sometimes the truth does not heal immediately. Sometimes it simply removes the last place where hope was hiding. 3 days later, Maya arranged a meeting. My parents came with their attorney. Tyler asked to attend. I agreed. Dad did not know he would be there. When Tyler walked into the conference room, my father's face hardened. What are you doing here? Tyler sat beside me, listening. Dad looked from him to me. So this is what you're doing now? Turning your brother against us? Tyler answered before I could. She didn't tell me anything you didn't already lie about. Mom looked down. Dad leaned toward his attorney. Maya placed the account statements on the table, then Rebecca's records, then the business transfer showing the matching amount. Finally, she placed Tyler's photograph of the relocation note beside them. Nicole with Rebecca until account issue resolved. Dad stared at his own handwriting. For once, he had no immediate explanation. Maya asked him whether he still maintained that the money had been spent on my care. Dad's attorney whispered to him. Then Dad spoke. I used some of it for the business. Some? Most of it. Tyler shook his head. Why hers? Dad looked at him. We needed the money. You had money too. I couldn't access yours. The room became completely silent. There it was. No lawyer had forced it from him. No complicated accounting, just the truth. Dad had access to mine, so he took mine. I asked him the question that mattered more. And why did you leave me? His jaw tightened. We didn't abandon you, Dad. You were with family, Dad. Rebecca loved you. Answer her, Tyler said. My father looked at him sharply. Stay out of this. No. Tyler's voice shook. but he did not look away. You made me believe my sister didn't want us. Dad leaned back. We were trying to protect you. From what? From knowing what you did, Mom began crying. Dad rubbed both hands over his face. Finally, he looked at me. You were asking questions. I felt something cold move through me. What questions? You noticed things. The bills. The calls. You kept asking why we were moving. Why the business needed money. Tyler was 9. He didn't understand any of it. And I did? Enough to make things harder. I stared at him. That was it. The answer I had carried for 15 years. I had not been left because Tyler needed them more. I had not been left because I was stronger. My father had taken the child who was easier to control, and left the one who might ask where her money had gone. Mom reached for my hand. I moved it away. She stopped. Dad looked exhausted now. I thought I'd fix it, Nicole. When? Once the business started making money, and when it didn't, I didn't know how to come back. You knew the address. That's not what I mean. I know. I finally did. Coming back would have required admitting what he had done. Leaving me had been easier. Maya slid the unsigned statement my father had brought to my house across the table. Nicole will not sign this. Dad's attorney nodded. We understand, Maya continued. Instead, we are requesting a complete accounting and repayment of the funds that can be established as improperly used, subject to the applicable legal process. My father looked at me. You're going to take our house. No. The answer came easily. I'm not taking anything from you. I'm asking for what was taken from me. We were your parents. You were. That landed harder than I intended. Mom covered her mouth. Dad looked away. I did not enjoy hurting them. That surprised me. For weeks, I had imagined this moment as victory. It did not feel victorious. It felt necessary. Then Tyler leaned forward. There's one more thing. Dad looked at him. Tyler's hands were clenched. I want you to tell Nicole what you told me when I asked about her. Dad said nothing. Tell her. Tyler, tell her. My father's eyes moved toward me. I waited. Finally, he spoke. I told Tyler you chose to stay. Why? Because he kept asking when you were coming. My throat tightened. So you made me the person who left him. Dad looked down. Yes. Tyler stood and walked toward the window. His shoulders were shaking. For 15 years, my brother had believed I rejected him. For 15 years, I had believed he forgot me. One lie had taken both of us from each other. I looked at my parents. The money could be calculated. The documents could be corrected. But there was no account for that. No number, no repayment. Maya asked whether I wanted to continue the meeting. I almost said no. Then I looked at Rebecca's handwriting on one of the records. She had kept everything for this moment. Not so I could punish them. So I would never have to beg them to believe me. I straightened in my chair. Yes, let's finish it. The meeting lasted another 40 minutes. This time, there were no surprises. No new companies. No hidden fortunes. No last-minute documents that magically solved everything. There was only the damage my parents had created, and the question of how much of it could still be repaired. Maya had already calculated the amount we could clearly support with records. The original money from my grandmother. The amount transferred into Dad's business. The portion that had never been used for me. My father's attorney tried to argue that some family expenses should be deducted. Maya disagreed. They went back and forth. I listened. For once, I did not need to fight every battle myself. Eventually, my father agreed to repay the amount established by the records. He could not pay it all immediately. Part would come from the sale of their house. The rest would be paid over time. I accepted that. Then Maya placed one final page in front of my parents. Dad frowned. What's this? Something I requested. It had nothing to do with money. It was only a few sentences. It stated that I had not chosen to remain in Ohio when I was 13. I had not refused to move with my family. I had not abandoned my brother. My parents had made the decision to leave me with Rebecca. Dad looked at me. Why do you need this? Because you spent 15 years telling a different story. Who's going to see it? Maybe no one. Then what's the point? Tyler turned from the window. I want it too. Dad looked at him. Tyler came back to the table. You made me angry at her for something she never did. Mom reached for the paper. I'll sign it. Dad stared at her. "Richard," she said quietly, "it's true." For several seconds, he did not move. Then he signed. No argument, no speech, just his name. Mom signed beneath him. Maya handed the page to me. I read it once. That was enough. The strange thing was that I did not feel victorious. I felt tired. I had imagined the truth as something enormous. A door bursting open, a weight disappearing. Instead, it arrived on an ordinary sheet of paper. My parents had left me. I had not chosen it. That was all 13-year-old me had needed someone to say. The agreements took several weeks to complete. My parents sold their house. Dad blamed the settlement at first. Then, according to Tyler, he stopped talking about it. I did not ask where they moved. I did not need to know. The first payment arrived 2 months later. I looked at the number in my account and felt almost nothing. That surprised me. For weeks, money had seemed to sit at the center of everything. But once it arrived, I understood that it had only opened the door to the real wound. The money had been taken from me, but so had something else. My place in my own family. That was harder to return. My mother called about a month after the settlement. I almost ignored it. Then I answered. "Hi, Nicole." "Hi, Mom." She asked if we could meet. I agreed to coffee. 1 hour, public place. No dad. She accepted every condition. When I arrived, she was already sitting near the window. She looked nervous. I remembered how many times I had been nervous around her. That realization changed the balance between us. Mom apologized. Not elegantly, not perfectly, but differently than before. She did not say they had done their best. She did not tell me how difficult things had been. She did not ask me to understand Dad. She simply said she had failed me. I listened. Then she said something I had not expected. I kept waiting for Richard to fix it. I looked at her. The business, the money, you, everything. He kept saying he would fix it. And I let waiting become an excuse for doing nothing. That was probably the most truthful thing she had ever told me. "Why didn't you call me yourself?" She looked down at her coffee. At first, I was ashamed. And later, I was afraid you would hate me, so you chose not knowing? Yes, I nodded. That was my mother, not an evil woman, not an innocent one either, a frightened woman who repeatedly chose the option that protected her from discomfort. And her daughter paid for it. "Can you forgive me?" I thought carefully before answering. Maybe someday. Her eyes filled. But forgiveness doesn't mean we go back to being a family like nothing happened. I know. And if Dad asks you to convince me to see him, the answer is no. She nodded. I need to decide that myself. I understand. For once, she did not push. That mattered more than another apology. My relationship with Tyler was easier, not easy. Easier. We started speaking every Sunday. At first, our conversations lasted 10 minutes, then 20, then an hour. He told me about growing up in Arizona. I told him about Rebecca. Sometimes we discovered memories that did not match. He remembered Dad saying I loved living with Rebecca. I remembered waiting beside the phone. He remembered Mom telling him I was too busy to visit. I remembered never being invited. Neither of us tried to make the other feel guilty. We simply replaced lies with facts. 6 months later, Tyler visited me. He stood on my porch with a backpack over one shoulder. For a second, I saw the 9-year-old boy whose room had been emptied, while mine remained untouched. Then he smiled. "Are you going to let me in?" I stepped aside. "Maybe." He laughed. We spent the weekend doing ordinary things. That was the best part. No lawyers, no documents, no parents. We cooked dinner. He burned the garlic bread. We argued about which movie to watch. On Sunday morning, I found him looking at a photograph of Rebecca on my bookshelf. I wish I remembered her better. "She remembered you." He turned. "Really? Of course. Even after everything?" "Tyler, you were 9. His eyes dropped. "I should have found you when I got older." "Yes." He looked surprised. I continued. "You were a child when they lied to you. But you weren't a child forever." I know. I could have told him it did not matter, but it did. And if we were going to have a real relationship, it could not begin with another comfortable lie. "I'm sorry," he said. "I believe you." That was enough. After he left, I finally opened the last box from Rebecca's apartment. I had avoided it for months. Inside were ordinary things: photographs, birthday cards, a scarf, receipts. At the bottom was a small silver keychain she had given me when I turned 18. One word was engraved on it: forward. I held it in my palm. Then I found a card underneath. It was in Rebecca's handwriting. Nicole, you spend too much time trying to become easy for other people to love. Don't. The right people will make room. I sat on the floor and cried. Rebecca had understood me before I understood myself. At 13, I believed my parents left because something about me made leaving possible. I was too independent, too serious, too difficult, too easy. For years, I changed the answer depending on what hurt less. Now I knew the truth. Their decision had never measured my value. It measured theirs, their fear, their selfishness, their weakness. Dad had taken my money because he believed he could replace it before anyone noticed. Then he left me because I had become connected to the problem he wanted to escape. Mom followed because confronting him would have required courage she did not have. And once enough time passed, both of them found it easier to live inside the lie. That was their story. It did not have to remain mine. I kept working. I kept my house. I invested most of the money that was repaid. And I used a small part of it to create an annual scholarship through a local organization that helped children being raised by grandparents, aunts, uncles, and other relatives. I named it after Rebecca. Not because she saved me. I no longer liked thinking of myself as someone who needed to be saved. I named it after her because she stayed. There is a difference. My father wrote to me several times. I answered once. He said he hoped we could rebuild our relationship. I told him I was not ready. He replied that he understood. Maybe one day I will see him. Maybe I won't. I no longer force myself to know the answer. My mother and I speak occasionally. Slowly, carefully. She has learned that crying does not change my answer. I have learned that saying no does not make me cruel. Tyler is my brother again, not the brother I had at 13. We cannot recover those years. We are building something new instead. That feels more honest. Almost a year after my parents appeared at my door, I stood on that same porch one evening. The street was quiet. My house was warm behind me. I thought about the girl my mother had dropped at Rebecca's apartment with enough clothes for 4 days. She had waited for people who were not coming. She had believed that if she became useful enough, quiet enough, good enough, they would choose her again. I wish I could tell her what I know now. You should never have had to audition for your own family. My parents came back 15 years later because they needed something from me. A signature, permission, one final act of obedience. Instead, they gave me something without meaning to, the truth. And once I had it, I stopped asking why they had not chosen me. I started asking why I had spent so many years letting their choice define me. Rebecca had been right all along. The right people make room. She had made room for me in a tiny apartment. Tyler was making room for me in his adult life. And finally, I had learned to make room for myself. I looked down at the silver keychain in my hand. Forward. Then I went inside and closed the door. Not because I was afraid someone would leave me again, because I finally understood that this was my home, and I got to decide who entered it. Thank you for staying with me until the end of my story. If it touched your heart, please subscribe because I share a brand new family story here every single day. And if you're not ready to leave yet, open the next story on your screen. I have a feeling it will stay with you just as long.